Isn't it incredible in Path of Exile that despite almost every build in existence having 90% physical damage reduction from armor, physical damage always seems to be the most scary? Why is that? Well, it's quite straightforward, really. That 90% number, it's lies, along with most of the rest of your character sheet. For example, lie, lie, usually a lie, 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 usually a lie, usually a lie, lie, lie if you get too much of it, and lie. So, having established that, what does armor actually do? Well, it provides physical damage reduction, of course, up to 90% when you're reading the character sheet. The trick here, as with all the other wonderful character sheet lies, is context. Armor only provides physical damage reduction up to, at most, 1/5 of that armor number on your character sheet, but usually it's a lot less. So, helpful numbers. Want to survive fairly comfortably in tier 16 maps, reducing most physical hits by that maximum of 90%? Well, the typical mob is rarely hitting you for any more than 2,000 physical damage at a time, so for that juicy 90% physical damage reduction, we're going to want 90,000 armor. Big scary league mechanic mobs like those undead you keep nuking out of the ground in expeditions, well, you can survive a few of their slams with a respectable 75% damage reduction, and against those, typically around 3,800 damage hits, you're going to want 57,000 armor. Want to survive against the biggest hits in the game with about 4,000 life on a typical fairly squishy build? Well, Shaper Slam and Lycia Beam, which are some of the biggest physical hits in the game, do about 10,000 physical damage, sometimes a bit more with crits, but let's say 10,000. To survive that, mathematically speaking, you're going to want 61% damage reduction, and for that you're going to want about 85,000 armor. Now, you might be thinking, hot damn, Cardio, these seem like real big numbers. Can I really get that much armor? Well, aside from the answer being yes, and it's now trivial with those sexy champion buffs from this league, you can get millions of armor. But we are trying to keep you alive without spending 30 mirrors on a Dreamfeather build, so let's move on to things that synergize with armor. The thing about armor is getting to that 90% damage reduction number is actually 3 times harder than getting to 75%, which is itself 3 times harder than getting to 50%. Wouldn't it be great if there was some way to mitigate that last 40% while only having to get the armor to get the 50%? Well, boy howdy do I have a present for you from the bottom left side of the tree. It's called additional physical damage reduction. As an example, you can roll up 8% additional physical damage reduction on a rare chest, and then another 8% on a shield, then grab the 3 extra maximum endurance charges from the tree, each of those is another 4% additional physical damage reduction, and that alone gives us 40% physical damage reduction, when you take the base 3 endurance charges into account. The great thing about these, they wait for armor to calculate how much percentage mitigation it's doing, and then they just add themselves on at the end. So that 40%, in addition with 50% from a reasonable amount of armor, that's giving you the benefit of 90,000 armor when you only have, say, 10,000. Seeming a bit more achievable? The logic falls up. More armor and more sources of damage reduction stack together to the point where 90% damage reduction against every physical hit in the game becomes a pretty foregone conclusion. If it's too hard to get that much armor even then, we can slap on a lightning coil and half the amount we need because half of it isn't even physical damage anymore. Armor doesn't care about any of those other silly damage type, Transcendence and Juggernaut notwithstanding. So, now we've got our 90% physical damage reduction. We never have to worry about physical damage again, right? Well, no. There's like 17 billion different sources of enemies ignoring your physical damage reduction in the game completely, so,